Amara and Momo stepped into Ming's clinic, and Amara couldn't help the incredulous look on her face as she turned to Momo, telling her she couldn't believe she was really making her do this. Momo just smiled, confident and teasing, saying that's what best friends were for. And once she married Ming, she would be the best lady by his side. Amara laughed softly, calling her crazy, shaking her head, and together they walked into Ming's office. He was sitting there, calm and collected, his eyes drifting first to Momo and then immediately to Amara. He asked if anything was wrong. Amara, her words stumbling as she searched for the right ones, told him she was sick and Momo had brought her to see him. Ming studied her carefully, telling her she seemed fine and motioned for her to sit. But before she could, Momo's voice cut in sharply, declaring that she was the one who had wanted to see him and that Amara was just an excuse. Ming turned to Momo, asking if she was okay. Amara, not wanting to interfere, excused herself and walked out, leaving them alone. Momo stood there, frustration and hurt written across her face, telling Ming that he was not being fair, not acknowledging what had happened between them. Ming, confused, asked what she meant, and Momo reminded him that he had kissed her, then ignored her completely. She had sent countless messages, but he had left them unread, abandoning her without explanation. Ming didn't respond immediately, sitting silently, measuring her words. Finally, he told her it was not the right time to discuss such matters. He was at work. Momo's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer, insisting that if they didn't address it now, he would continue avoiding her. She demanded to know what the kiss meant, why he had kissed her. Ming hesitated, unwilling to answer, but Momo pressed, her voice unwavering, declaring that she would not leave until she received the truth. Ming finally admitted the kiss had been a mistake, that he shouldn't have done it, and that it was not gentlemanly, giving her mixed signals. Momo's chest tightened, her heart sinking at his words. She asked if he had kissed her simply because he could, if he felt nothing for her. Ming apologized, saying that if she wanted more, he couldn't give it to her. Momo stood there, stunned, heart aching, before a sudden surge of boldness pushed her forward. She rushed to his side and forcefully sat on his lap. Ming tried to resist, to protest, but she leaned in and kissed him, claiming with certainty that he was now her boyfriend, whether he liked it or not. She grabbed his wallet and stood, instructing him to come get it after work, promising she would be dressed for their first date. With that, she left, leaving Ming alone, stunned, wondering what had just occurred, and thinking that she was utterly crazy for making him her boyfriend by force. Meanwhile, Suri approached Lee Weii, holding food carefully in her hands, telling him she had brought him something to eat. Lee Wei's piercing gaze locked on her, and she panicked, explaining that she had overheard his assistant mention he hadn't eaten all day, and she just wanted to help. Lee Wei's eyes remained cold and unyielding, instructing her to throw the food in the trash. Suri blinked in shock, but quickly obeyed, tossing the meal aside. Lee Wei's voice remained sharp and commanding, warning her that just because he had called her a good employee didn't make them friends, that boundaries must be respected, and any crossing of those lines again would cost her her job. He reminded her never to enter his office without being summoned. Suri immediately nodded, apologizing repeatedly, and Lee Weii dismissed her, returning to his work. That night, Amara sat alone, her gaze fixed on her cell phone, noticing that Lee Weii had not responded to her earlier message. Master Shen's words echoed in her mind, the thought of faking to break Lee Wei's heart swirling with hesitation and determination. If it was the only way to make Lee Weii whole again, to reconcile him with Master Shen and ensure he could complete his mission without distraction, she would do it. A sudden clarity struck her, and she stood, grabbing her pillow, deciding to sleep in the other room. She thought that would be a start, to see how he would react. Hours later, Lee Weii returned, visibly exhausted from a long day of work. He checked his cell phone and realized it was already past midnight. Every fiber of his being ached to see Amara, to hold her in his arms, to find solace in her presence. Without a second thought, he rushed to her room, heart racing with anticipation, only to stop abruptly, frozen. The bed was empty. Lee Wei's eyes scanned the room, searching for her. He called out her name, thinking she might be in the bathroom, but no response came. A flicker of unease crept through him as he wondered where she could have gone. Maybe she was still in her lab. Without hesitation, he dashed out, heart racing, and made his way there. The lab was empty, the faint hum of equipment the only sound. Panic surged through him as he imagined what might have happened to her. He rushed out again, pulling out his cell phone and dialing her number, the ringing guiding him toward another room. He burst in and finally found her, curled up in sleep, the room rearranged with her things scattered around. His expression softened for a fleeting moment, a mixture of relief and confusion, before he stooped to gather her belongings and carry them back to their main bedroom. But before he could pick her up, her eyes fluttered open. She met his gaze with quiet defiance, telling him she didn't want to return to the main bedroom, insisting she wanted to stay where she had woken. Lee Weii froze, trying to process her words. He asked himself what this sudden change meant, why she would do this. And his mind instinctively flicked to his assistant's earlier remarks and the pregnancy prevention pills he had noticed. His expression darkened. His concern mingled with frustration. Without hesitation, he reached for her, lifting her from the bed into his arms. She tried to protest silently, but he moved swiftly, carrying her out of the room. The weight of her in his arms pressed against his chest, a mixture of determination and protectiveness, driving his every step as he walked back toward their main bedroom, unwilling to leave her anywhere else. Lee Weii lay beside Amara, holding her tightly in his arms. Their eyes met, locking in a silence. He pressed his hand gently against her cheek, his voice low and firm, telling her she shouldn't pull a stunt like leaving his side to sleep in another room without reason, reminding her that he would always bring her back. He asked her if she was okay. Amara shook her head softly, assuring him that she was fine. Lee Weii drew her closer, his arms tightening around her as he whispered that after such a long day, all he wanted was to hold her as close as possible. She buried herself in his chest, letting his warmth and strength envelop her. Though part of her had intended to break his heart, she realized she had failed at it. Perhaps it was for the best. She had missed him deeply, and being in his arms always felt like home. Lee Weii held her even closer, unwilling to let go as they both drifted into a peaceful sleep. The following morning, Amara and Lee Weii sat together at the breakfast table. He observed her carefully, contemplating whether to ask about the pills, but chose to wait, hoping she would tell him in her own time. Amara's thoughts wandered to Master Shen's plan, and how last night she had failed, ending up in his embrace instead. She busied herself with her cell phone, pretending to text someone. Lee Wei's gaze lingered on her, noting her distraction, and he ignored it at first, assuming she was catching up on school matters. He mentioned that he would try to finish work early so they could spend time together. Amara blushed and smiled at her screen, and Lee Wei's eyes sharpened, tracing every subtle reaction. He pulled her chair closer to his hands grabbing her swiftly and placing her on the table. His gaze pierced hers as he leaned in, taking her cell phone and setting it aside, his presence commanding yet gentle. He told her he couldn't wait to finish his work so they could spend as much time together as possible. Amara's surprise melted into a quiet warmth. She had expected anger, but he was gentle instead. She asked if he wasn't upset that she was on her phone, and Lee Wei's calm voice reminded her that he trusted her completely. He chuckled at her worry, assuring her that he knew she wouldn't cheat on him. Curious, he asked why she was questioning him, and Amara feigned innocence, saying she was simply curious. Lee Weii reached into his pocket and pulled out a sparkling bracelet, placing it gently on her wrist. He explained it was custom-made, adorned with one of the rarest diamonds, and that he had meant to give it to her after her presentation but hadn't found the right moment. Amara's eyes lit up as she admired it, thanking him and smiling at its beauty. Lee Weii took her hand and kissed it softly, calling her the most beautiful, and she couldn't help but keep her eyes on him, lingering in the warmth of his attention. She asked about Yan, wanting to know if she was okay. Lee Weii told her that Yan was still poisoned and would only receive the antidote when he deemed it appropriate, emphasizing that she had to learn her lesson. He told Amara not to worry about someone who had nearly killed her, insisting that justice had to be served. Before she could respond, Lee Wei's cell phone rang. He checked the caller ID and saw it was Kai, answering immediately asking if Kai was all right and needed anything. Kai's low voice trembled as he insisted Lee Weii come over, saying he needed him. Lee Weii, sensing the urgency, promised he would be there, ending the call quickly. He looked at Amara and told her that he needed to check on Kai, who didn't seem okay. Amara, worried, offered to go with him, but he insisted she needed to attend school, promising to update her if anything happened. Nodding reluctantly, she watched him leave, concern etched on her face. Lee Weii pulled up at Kai's house and hurried inside, finding him seated on the couch, his expression heavy and tense. Without hesitation, Lee Weii rushed to his side, asking if he was all right and what had happened, ready to confront whatever trouble had brought his cousin to this state. Lee Wei's eyes found Kai, who looked up with reddened eyes and told him to go upstairs. His father wanted to see him. Confused, Lee Weii asked what was going on. Kai only urged him to see for himself. Adrenaline spiked through him as he raced up the stairs, his mind flashing with horrible possibilities. He paused at the doorway to his uncle's room and almost dropped. The man lay there, fever-pale and clearly sick. Lee Weii moved slowly to the bedside and stood over him as the uncle's eyelids fluttered. The old man opened his eyes, turned toward Lee Weii, and in a low, rasping voice said he was glad Lee Weii had come, that he had not expected him. Lee Wei's face remained unreadable. He asked why his uncle had wanted to see him. There was no pity in him, no compassion, not after everything his uncle had done, the theft of the family company, the damage to their lives. The uncle kept his gaze weak and steady and, in a whisper, said he had hoped to turn his health around, but that fate had other plans. He let out a hollow laugh and told Lee Weii the sight should make him happy. Lee Weii did not flinch. He stood waiting for whatever confession would come. The uncle said the doctors had given him weeks, perhaps months, and that he wanted to tell Lee Weii something before time ran out. He claimed he had never meant to betray his brother, that guilt haunted him day and night, and that he saw his brother's face whenever he closed his eyes. Each word was a knife. Lee Weii felt his chest tighten, the terrible confirmation settling in that the man before him had been involved in his family's destruction. He leaned closer, eyes sharp and cold, and demanded whether the uncle had been the one who set the fire that killed their family. He held that gaze, waiting for the single answer that would let him decide what came next. In that stretched, terrible moment, every part of him was poised and ready to end it himself and watch the air leave the man's body until he was nothing but an empty shell. Lee Wei's uncle kept his eyes locked on him, his voice weak but steady as he admitted that he hadn't directly killed Lee Wei's family, though he had contributed to it. The words struck Lee Weii like a knife to the chest, a sharp pang that made his fists clench tightly. His uncle's gaze remained fixed on him as he continued, warning that the whole situation was far more dangerous than Lee Weii had imagined. Too many players were involved, and everyone, including himself, had been used as a mere chess piece in a much larger game. Desperation clawed at Lee Weii as he demanded to know who was behind everything, whether his uncle had met the person, and if he even knew them. His uncle raised a frail hand, asking Lee Weii to promise one thing first. Lee Weii, his pulse quickening, asked what he wanted. The uncle's eyes softened as he told him to promise to take care of Kai, to guide him through a world he was too young to understand. Lee Wei's chest tightened again, but he nodded firmly, assuring his uncle that he and Kai were already close, that he would always protect him no matter what. A small, grateful smile appeared on his uncle's lips. But Lee Wei's fury simmered just beneath the surface. He pressed on, demanding to know who had masterminded everything. The uncle leaned in, whispering that the mastermind was untouchable, someone no one could bring down. He had orchestrated the fire, the takeover of East Gate Group, and had manipulated powerful people with promises of reward, including Lee Wei's uncle, who had been promised the presidency of East Gate Group. Lee Wei's teeth clenched as he asked again for the name, for a description. His uncle's voice dropped even lower. He had never seen the man's face, never heard his real voice, and the man never appeared without a mask. He had remained a phantom, untouchable. Lee Wei's fury simmered beneath his calm exterior as he demanded the man's name, his face, any detail he could grasp. His uncle's words sent a chill through him. He had never seen the man's face, nor heard his true voice. He always wore a mask, never appearing casually or revealing his identity, and even his uncle had never glimpsed his real face. Lee Wei's need for answers burned hotter, and he asked if his uncle at least knew how the man was addressed. The uncle leaned in, and Lee Weii mirrored him, hanging on every word. Quietly, almost reverently, his uncle whispered that the man was simply referred to as Master. Lee Wei's pulse raced, mind spinning as only one person came to mind, his master, Master Shen. Shock rooted him in place as he stared at his uncle, his voice sharp and demanding, asking if he was certain. The nod from his uncle confirmed it. Then came the instructions. To contact the so-called master, a code had to be sent to a specific number. Lee Wei's uncle reached for a pen and paper, and Lee Weii handed them over without hesitation. He watched every movement, his heart hammering, as his uncle wrote down the number and the code and handed them directly to him. No time was wasted. Lee Weii snatched the note and bolted out. Kai walked to him, voice trembling as he asked what his father had said. Lee Weii barely responded, his mind too chaotic, telling Kai he would explain later. There was something urgent he had to do. He rushed out. Sitting in his car, Lee Weii accelerated, the engine roaring in sync with the storm inside him. His thoughts collided and spiraled. Could it really be Master Shen? The man who had raised him, trained him, taught him strategy, defense, and the art of manipulation, the very person he had trusted implicitly. Could he truly be the one responsible for massacring his entire family? The thought sent a cold shiver through him. Master Shen was brilliant, cunning, and a master of deception. But to imagine him orchestrating such horror made Lee Wei's mind reel. Every possibility collided in his head as he tried to piece together the impossible truth, struggling to comprehend how the man who had shaped his life could also be the architect of his deepest tragedy. Meanwhile, Amara sat in the cafeteria, her eyes fixed on the pamphlet her professor had given her. Her mind raced as she considered how this boot camp could be the perfect opportunity to put Master Shen's plan into motion. It would advance her career and studies, and more importantly, it could help Lee Weii return to the person he once was. She thought about how being away from him for 2 weeks might allow him to regain his focus, how her absence could prevent her from being a distraction, and how this would serve the mission. With a decisive breath, she pulled out her cell phone, typed in the website, and registered herself for the boot camp. Meanwhile, Lee Weii rushed into his office, shutting the door behind him before sinking into his chair. He took a deep, steadying breath and reached for his cell phone, thinking of calling Master Shen to confront him, but he stopped himself. He couldn't do that yet. He needed a strategy first. Instead, he pulled out the piece of paper his uncle had given him, saved the number, and sent the code. He stared at his phone, hoping for a response as his uncle had promised, but nothing came. Frustration gnawed at him, yet he could not put it down, constantly checking, waiting for some sign, some acknowledgement. Hours passed. Later that night, he worked late again, his focus broken only by the compulsive urge to glance at his phone, hoping it would light up with a reply. There was nothing. By the time he finally drove home, it was almost midnight. He thought about Amara, guessing that she was probably asleep, and a tight knot formed in his chest. All he wanted was to see her, to hold her close, to let her calm the storm in his mind. But when he entered the house, he was surprised to find her still awake. She saw him immediately, rushing over and wrapping her arms around him, telling him she had been waiting. His eyes softened as he asked why she was still up, why she hadn't gone to bed yet. She took his hands, telling him she had wanted to see him and had even prepared something to eat, and that a bath was ready for him. Without waiting for his response, she led him to the bathroom, helping him undress and making sure he settled into the warm water. She sat beside him, her eyes bright, smiling as she watched him relax. He let her hands rest gently on him, feeling the soothing rhythm of her touch as she massaged his back. He admitted that he was happy to be home with her, that work had been tough and exhausting, and that being with her brought him a rare sense of peace. Amara reminded him that was all the more reason to relax, her expression shifting as she asked about Kai, about his father's condition. Lee Weii remained silent for a moment, replaying the revelations from his uncle in his mind. Looking back at her, he admitted that Kai was hurt. Despite everything, his father was still his father, and seeing him in pain brought unavoidable turmoil. He promised that once things settled down, he would take her and Kai somewhere to rest and recover, a reprieve from the weight of it all. Amara nodded, a small smile forming as she agreed that it was a good idea. Her gaze lingered on him, and she asked what he would do if he came home and found her gone. Li Wei's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing as he asked why she would speak like that. She simply smiled, curious, and asked if that would break his heart. He kept his gaze steady on her, telling her that it would not. He would always find her and bring her back, no matter what. Pressing further, she asked what could truly break his heart. He studied her, puzzled by her strange questions, and leaned closer. He told her the only thing that could break him would be if something happened to her. If she were hurt, if she lost her life, if she fell for someone else, and he saw her with that person, sharing the life and moments they had together. The thought of another man being near her, touching her, was unbearable, and he promised that she belonged to him and him alone. After her bath and dinner, Amara and Lee Weii lay together in bed, his arms holding her tightly. She wanted to tell him about seeing Master Shen, but she refrained, not wanting to ruin their plan. He traced his hand over her face, asking what she was thinking, his mind flicking to the pills again. He tested her gently, teasing, asking her what she thought about having his baby. She looked away shyly, but he cupped her face, tilting it up, insisting he was serious. She reminded him they weren't married, and he asked what if they were, but she remained silent, deflecting and changing the subject. She told him it was late, and they should sleep. Li Wei pulled her closer, watching over her as she drifted off, the words of his assistant echoing in his mind. Perhaps she was avoiding getting pregnant to avoid being tied to him, and the secret of the pregnancy prevention pills gnawed at him quietly, a thought he couldn't dismiss.